I'm so excited to jump into this conversation today. I really want to welcome and take the time just to acknowledge Emma for joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so blessed because after everything that happened with the events, I had planned to have Emma come and join us at one of our Love What You Do collective events, and with all the border closures and everything that happened, it just didn't work out. So I'm so excited that we still get to have this chat and to be able to share your story and your journey throughout COVID with your businesses and everything else in between.
Me too. I'm delighted. It almost felt like fate because I was sort of worried about traveling and then realized that I'd been in Sydney and they closed the border and said, you can't have been in Sydney in the last 2 weeks. And then they closed the borders for good. So here we are doing it the way that people do it these days, online.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy, isn't it? Just absolute crazy days. Like some days I wake up and like I don't like to look at the news in the morning. It's not something that I like to put into my consciousness in the morning. But then when I do look at it throughout the day, it's like, oh my God, like it's like we're in a completely different world. It's bizarre, isn't it?
It is like living in a movie, in a book, this sort of strange dystopian world, but it's where we are. And I think it's how we all try and make the most of it that's really going to define this experience for us as individuals.
I totally agree. So just to get started, what I'd love to do is actually go right back to the beginning. Before we even talk about this year, I'd love to know and for you to share with my listeners where it all began. What started Barre? What was your inspiration? Where did it all start?
I'd love to talk about that. I should tell you first that I have a cold, not COVID. That's why I sound a little bit husky. I don't like taking any kind of medicine, so I put some peppermint drops under my tongue to try and clear my nose, but it's not worked as well as I would have liked. But so my journey, it's been a really fun one. I was living in Sydney with my now husband. He wasn't my husband then. And I was working for a group of investors on another health and wellbeing business. And I fell pregnant at a time when I'd been told by my gynecologist that I couldn't fall pregnant unless I had a pretty major surgery. And so we fell pregnant really quickly, and it was a big surprise. And we sort of ummed and ahed about staying in Sydney, and then realized that we probably wouldn't be able to live the life that we wanted to live on one income living in Bondi. So we decided to move to Melbourne. And it was in Melbourne that we conceived of the idea for Barre Body. And it all happened very, very quickly. So my son was 3 months old when we had the idea. And then from that point to opening our first studio was 3 months exactly. So we opened the studio on the day my son was 6 months old. And I remember hustling like you wouldn't believe. We didn't know how we were going to pay the rent. We moved out of my mum's house. So we'd been living with my mum. We moved out of my mum's house and into an apartment a block and a half down the road from our first studio in Flinders Lane. And we're like, oh, we didn't even know if we're going to be able to pay the first month's rent. But we just sort of threw caution to the wind and just went for it. And it was a pretty crazy time because I was breastfeeding. So I'd go and teach a class, I'd race home, and it was only like 2 minutes to go from the studio to home, race home, feed my son, go back, teach another class, tidy up. So it was pretty crazy. But I was really blessed because my husband was working from home as well. And so we got to have this really lovely experience of both working and both being full-time parents, or, as best you can. So it was really, really, really special. And Barre Body took off a lot faster than I would have thought. I remember when we thought, so I saw the trend in the States that Barre was really huge over there. And I just knew that it had really great potential in Australia and nobody was doing it here. I think there was one studio offering a licensed barre class, and that was it. So we decided to just go for it. And I remember thinking at the time, if it all goes to absolute SHIT, I'll just turn it into a yoga studio, because yoga is my sort of original training. It's my, deepest, longest passion. And so that was sort of my thought, that if it didn't work out, we would turn it into a yoga studio. But it was so quick. People just got really, really loved it. And I knew we were onto something special when lots and lots of clients who had no idea what barre was. So nobody had any idea, except, you know, if you lived in the States, you might have a little bit of a clue. But I knew we had something special when all of these people who were coming to the classes who hadn't had any experience of it, didn't know what it was. The feedback was consistently, I just love it. My body's never looked better. I've never enjoyed exercise before. I absolutely love this. So we knew we were onto something special. And then it was a pretty exciting couple of years after that. We opened, I think, 6 more studios in 2 and a bit years. So we went from 1 to 7 really quickly. And then we've opened a few more since then and closed a few. So there's been a bit of shrinking and growing. We closed a few studios. We sadly closed our Brisbane studios during COVID at the very beginning of that. I know we'll get to that later, so I won't jump ahead too much, but it's been one beautiful, magical ride. We opened the studios in Melbourne, and then we moved to Sydney and opened studios in Sydney, and then we moved up to Byron to do Brisbane and Byron Bay. And we've invested a lot in our online business, which again, I know we'll talk a lot about, and our teacher training. So we're much more than a studio brand now. And I just feel really, really proud of what we've created and the connections with clients and the magical experience and all the love that's sort of infused in it. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because you can feel that when you talk about your business, you can really feel that you have so much deep belief in it and deep love for it. And you just, even just the way that you talk about your team, and I know we're going to get to that as well, but it's just like every element of what you do, I can really feel that you've really infused a lot of love and care in it, which is just beautiful to see. And so I really want to ask, so by the sounds of it, when you first opened the first studio in Melbourne and you were like, not sure how you were going to pay the rent and everything, did it feel like a big risk? Are you normally a big risk taker?
It did feel like a big risk, but my husband and I were just so excited about it. We were so willing to take the risk. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and my dad's not a big risk taker. So neither my mum nor my dad, who are both, you know, giving us their advice, neither of them are risk takers. And I remember my dad saying to me, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, you'll go back and you'll get a job. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. He said, you're very employable. And I was like, yeah, I am very employable. I could get a job. And so we didn't invest a huge amount. We had, I think, we started this studio with a really, I think we had $25,000 or something. So it was a really small investment. I mean, it was everything we had at the time, but it was a small investment then. The game has changed since. This was 9 years ago. So the game has changed massively since then. The standards of studios have really, really increased, and fit outs. And so the cost to enter is a little bit higher, probably less in regional areas where you can get away with a little bit less. But yeah, we just felt like it was a huge risk, especially the bit about when we moved out of my mum's house and didn't know how we were going to pay that first month's rent. I remember because my husband was doing recruitment as well, and that was a bit up and down. So it was, you know, but the risk was so well worth it. And I think, you know, my advice to anyone who's weighing up the risk is to, you know, ask yourself 2 questions. What's the worst thing that can happen? That's what my dad asked me. What's the absolute worst thing that can happen? And the other one is, you know, imagine the rewards if you get it right. Even if you get it half right, are the rewards worth the risk? And for me, overwhelmingly, you know, yes, the rewards were absolutely worth the risk. And the worst thing that could happen wasn't so bad.
I love that. I love those questions. They're like the perfect way to look at it from both sides. And it's often we get so caught up in the fear of what we're going to lose that we don't realize what we're going to gain. Like there's just so much of that. And it's like, who cares? Like, what is it? 6, maybe 12 months we go all in and, you know, put a bit of money into it, and you're right. Just end up getting another job. Like,
so my dog's tapping on the glass door to come in. So I have to let her in. Otherwise she'll keep tapping away at us. Come on, Daisy. Come on, baby. This is Daisy.
Oh, so cute. Awesome. Okay, so then when you went and then you opened 6 in the next 2 years, like that's a huge undertaking. What were some of the lessons you learned through that?
That was the craziest time. So my husband, Matt, he and I were just high. We were totally high on the adrenaline rush of doing deals and opening studios, and we were so into it, and it was really like Barre was just growing exponentially at that time, and it was just this really wild and exciting ride. I didn't start learning big lessons until we were maybe a few years in. And I've learned lots and lots of lessons along the way. A couple of big ones is to make sure you trademark properly. These are all my own mistakes. So, everyone's going to have different lessons, but, my mistakes, trademark properly. Always make sure if you're going to tell anybody anything about your business, get them to sign a confidentiality and non-compete agreement. We actually had a consultant who consulted to us. We were looking at franchising, and they went and opened a competing business straight after that consulting project, and we were like, oh, that was a big mistake, big mistake. Other lessons, one of the biggest lessons I think is, and my very, very, very good friend and person who works in the business with us, she says done is better than perfect, and I'm a big believer of that. So we've managed to do a lot of stuff with that sort of as the mantra, let's just get it out there and see how it goes. And I'll say to the team, don't spend your time getting things perfect, because I can guarantee you, the things that you don't love, leave them. Like, let's launch and come back to them later. And I can guarantee you don't ever go back to things later. You just keep steaming ahead. You're going on to the next thing. Other big lessons, big lessons for me personally as a boss. I put so much of my heart and soul, like, honestly, it just oozes and drips out of me. It's the reason that I'm in business is that connection to customers, that connection to people. Like, I feel what lights me up, aside from the creative process and, growing a business and all the wonderful things that go with it, the thing that lights me up is building and nurturing this amazing team. We have the best humans working at Barre Body and Bend. And, but one of the lessons I learned is that it's not forever. As much as you want it to be forever, people leave. And, I've had a few heartbreaks along the way, and it feels, personal and like, honestly, like heartbreak, like a boyfriend. And just learning to not take it personally, and to, that nobody's gonna feel the same way about my business as I do. And that's sort of just, so that's been a big lesson for me along the way. But
and that's a hard lesson to learn. Like, I get that. And I think that a lot of business owners go through that as they hire and like let staff go, or staff leave and then go open something so similar to what you've created. Like, there's always different situations that happen. And I think that that's, you're right. You're so right in the way that it's not forever. And I think when you hire someone, you see them and you kind of see the vision for what it is that you want them to be in your business. And you see that for a long term, usually. And then when that doesn't transpire, it can be heartbreaking. I totally get that.
Yeah, but then, the flip side is we have this amazing team that are like family. They are like family. We have just the most beautiful, heartfelt exchanges almost daily. So, I'm never, ever, ever going to stop pouring my heart and soul in, because the day-to-day magic is it's palpable.
Yeah. And look, that doesn't happen overnight. So share with us a little bit of some of the things that you do maybe to onboard your new staff, or is there anything that you do that you really are your non-negotiables when it comes to working with your team?
So for me, a big part of it is making them really understand that because we're a family business, we're a big business, but we're a family business. It's just my husband and I. We don't have investors. We don't have shareholders. It's just us. We can afford to really set the tone and the culture. And for us, the expectation is it's people over profits always. Like, it's, the heart and soul. We do things for love. We're big on charitable contributions. We're big on, hopefully trying to make a difference in the world. So all of that, it is infused in the language, in everything we do. Like, you could ask any teacher, and we had pre-COVID 100 teachers working for Barre Body. You could ask any one of them, what does Emma bang on and on about all the time, and they'd say love. It's the idea of choosing love all the time over fear. And so that's the big overhang, like the cultural piece that really sets the tone in the business, is that live from a place of love, speak from love, make decisions from love versus fear. And it's all about people, whether it's clients or the team, rather than profit. And my strong belief, and what has held true thus far, is that profit follows. Like, if you do a really great job of looking after people and deliver an amazing product, profit follows. So it is just, it's not, I wouldn't even say it's something that I do consciously. It is just absolutely part of the fabric. It's woven into everything that we do, that creates that sense of family and connection and belonging.
It sounds like it's like a full-on core value of yours, and that is just bled through everything.
It's the core value. Yeah.
And so is there anything that you like? I know you said it's not anything that you do, but is there some way that you, like, when you are hiring, even, like, that's what you're looking for when it comes to people, that they actually are in that place of caring above all else?
Yeah, I mean, I don't need everybody else to be the same as me. We need a team that's diverse, and I'm looking for really talented people that get what we're doing, that want to be part of something special, that want to feel part of a family as opposed to work in a business. So I wouldn't say I am always trying to hire for cultural fit. And I'm pretty darn good at that. Like, people who just get it. It's not about the money, it's about the love. But in terms of what I do, I think that's really different is that I probably spend maybe as much as 50% of my time on people. So checking in, and I mean the staff. So my expectation is, I've got to sit at the top. We have a really, really flat structure, but if you imagine the theory, I've got to sit at the top of the business and I guess express through actions and words my expectations and how I want things done, and that's with love and care. And so then that has to filter down to the clients. So I spend probably 50% of my time talking to people, checking in on people, making space for conversation, checking in on people's personal lives as well. So the personal and the professional really bleed into each other, and that's what it's like with a family. So, I take the time to really make sure that I'm understanding how my team is and making sure they're okay. It's really just, so important to me. And I think that's the key, is that it's hard. You can't fake it. Like, I genuinely 100% really, really, really care. And I really want everyone to flourish. I don't want to just suck all of people's creative juices or all of their time and efforts and energy out of them. I want them to feel fulfilled and inspired and empowered and passionate. And, the way to do that is to make sure people have creative projects, make sure they have ownership, make sure they feel empowered, a sense of autonomy, they feel freedom, they know that it's okay to mess up, they know that it's okay to say, hey, I really, really need some help, I can't get my work done. I really push holidays, encourage everyone to take breaks, just knowing how restored and rejuvenated. So it's in everything, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you've just, itemized all of those key things, because it's not just, I think this, it's so in you, like it's so ingrained in you that you're like, yeah, I just do my thing. But there's so many things that you do that maybe other business owners don't realize that they do. And like, it's things like the autonomy and things like letting people make mistakes, because we know that's how people learn. And that's being part of their personal lives as well as their professional lives. Like, that's letting go of the old paradigm of having to be boss and employee, right? Like it's actually like, no, we're on the same page. We're here together. We're here to create a certain outcome for our customers. And that's what's most important. And to do that, we've got to care, like, because your personal life does bleed into your professional life. Like we can't expect it not to.
I think the mistakes point to is a really good one. That's one of the things, the reason that the way that I manage to, I think, empower and inspire and give people a sense of ownership over their work is that I'm constantly telling people, you know, let's say you've got 10 decisions to make. Rather than coming to me to find out what I say, you know, what would be my decision to those 10 decisions, let's just imagine, for argument's sake, that 6 of the decisions that I would make are exactly the same as that you would make. And then let's say 2 of them I would make differently and 2 of them you would make differently. One of yours is better than mine. One of mine is better than yours. And what's the end result? It's the same. Like the result is they get to make their own decisions. I don't have to deal with that decision because it gives me time to do other things. And, you know, we end up with 8 out of 10 of the best, you know, the best possible outcomes. So that's sort of, that's one of the little analogies that I give to the team. So make your own decisions.
Yeah, I love that. And I think when you're hiring from that place of really looking for that great culture fit, then you already have that trust in your employee, knowing that, and you can see the best in them, and you can see that they can make those critical decisions or decisions from day to day, not have to rely on you to make those small decisions that aren't going to make a big impact at the end of the day, but to them, they want to get it right. So I guess when you do that, you're building such self-worth and self-belief in your employees. It's just incredible to see. That's why I think that you've created such a great family, because they feel trusted. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so.
But I think that's one of the biggest things that makes people disengage in a role, is that they don't feel trusted. They don't feel, they're not given the freedom. They're not given the autonomy.
Yeah. And I think when you stop growing in a role or in an organization, that's when you have to leave. And so that's another thing that I'm super focused on is, you know, what's the next thing for you? What's the next piece of development? What's the next project, so that you can continue to grow and evolve with us?
Nice. That's so good. And what about you with your leadership? What's some of the things that you do to help yourself grow?
Good question. One I've been pondering a lot lately. I've done a lot of personal growth, like personal and spiritual growth of late, particularly with my meditation practice. But I feel like I sort of had the realization that most of my growth from a leadership perspective, from an education, learning and leadership perspective, has been on the job training for the last, you know, certainly the last few years. And so I'm about to undertake a master's next year. So I'm really very excited about that. I'm going to try and probably do it part-time so I can split, so I don't drop the ball anywhere, but I'm really excited about that. I'm doing, enrolled in a master's of positive psychology. So applied positive psychology, basically a master's of happiness, which is just so, could not be more my vibe if,
love it.
Yeah, if it was actually called a master's of happiness. So that's, I'm really excited about that.
Oh, I love that. And I can imagine all the different things you're going to be able to implement within the business, as well as then the roll on impact, the ripple effect that that's going to have on your customers. Oh, that's going to be so good. You're going to love it. So
Thank
good.
you. Beyond that, it's just reading a whole lot of books and listening to podcasts. I have some great podcasts that I love. And just constantly, I'm a big reader. I listen to lots of audiobooks, and I'm a voracious, physical book reader as well. So just, consuming tons and tons of media to grow, because that's, what's the point if we're not growing and evolving?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Totally agree. Is there anything else that you do when it comes to your team that you feel helps to create that loyalty, or to create, help support them in staying motivated?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I'll sort of point to. One of them is that we have regular team retreats. So not sure how we're going to do it this year, but last year we all went to Elements at Byron for 3 days. And sometimes they're working retreats. Sometimes it's about strategy and creativity. This particular one, it's really what we need in the business. And at the end of, so this was September last year, we were all feeling a little bit I think the team was just needed to come together and really connect. And so that one was just about, it was literally just a 3-day holiday together. So those team retreats, they're expensive from a business perspective, but they are so worth it. They're so rich and amazing. So that's one thing. Another thing that I do that I think holds real value is that before or at the beginning or at the end of our team meetings, we do a little check-in to see how everybody's feeling. Sometimes it's, what do you give today? What's your vibe at the moment? And it's not just professional. I want it to sit across personal and professional. And people, of course, have the right not to answer if they don't want to, but nobody does, to see how everybody's feeling, so we give a score out of 10. So, 6 out of 10, whatever. And it just gives us the opportunity to know how everybody else on the team is feeling. So we have a really loving team. Obviously, that's the standard, that's the cultural expectation. But, if somebody's feeling a 6 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10, or heaven forbid, lower than that, we all hold space for that person and give them more, cut them more slack, or just connect with them, touch base with them. It just creates a really different dynamic when everybody knows how everybody else is. So that's really, really powerful, that practice.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really powerful. And I imagine that, when even just voicing it, so someone feels seen and heard when they're in that position, to know that they've got that support and people holding space for them, but also then just being able to go, this is how I'm feeling, also then gives you the ability to then go, okay, so how can we support you throughout that?
How can we better support you?
We better, change it, whatever it is that's going on for you. Because I think in those, especially in team situations, you need to gauge that, because if one person's feeling it, then another person's probably feeling an element of it, right?
But not always knowing why and the context. And I think the really powerful part is giving permission for people's personal lives to be part of their professional life. And, you don't have to, things might be going badly at home, and, why should that mean that you still have to behave exactly the same way in a professional context? It's affecting you. And we're the people that are seeing this, this imaginary person, we're the people that are seeing them every day. So we're probably in the best position to provide them with that, those little pick-me-ups and emotional support. So it's really powerful.
And just by doing that, you're giving the team the tools. Like, this is why I'm just thinking about this as you're saying it. Like, you're giving the team the tools to be able to then do that for your customers, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Empathy, kindness, compassion.
Amazing. Beautiful. So is there anything else that you feel is, when it comes to your leadership and your style, is there anything else that you'd love to share that you feel is really important, or that you do for yourself to help you become a better leader?
Oh, this is good. You're dragging more and more out of me. Just constant reevaluation of who I am as a person, whether I'm showing up as best I can. The practice of meditation has just given me this whole new space in my head to really see things more clearly. If that was one little gift I would recommend you give yourselves, it is the practice of meditation. But just constantly checking in. I think the practice of meditation gives me the space. It almost helps me see myself and see my life from above, see the big picture more clearly. And so I do get to keep, checking myself.
Which is so important, because when you're holding space for such a large group of people, you've got to be okay to be able to then hold that space. So if your cup is empty, or if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're going to absolutely bring that into the conversation, or bring that into the situation with your team. So I think that that's really key, that you're taking that time to center yourself and ground yourself before you even step into the situation of being a leader.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. Okay. So I'm like, where do we take it from here? One, I really want to talk about the online a little bit before we then jump into COVID. So what was
the two kind of one and the same?
Yeah, for sure. But one of the things you said to me when we spoke originally was that you started the online way before everyone else was starting the online. So what was it? Was there anything that spurred that on? Was there anything that was it just like an idea that you're like, I'm just going to make this happen? Or is it just like, you were like, no, this is where the future is going? Or what spurred that idea?
A little bit of both, column A, column B. So when we opened the first studio in Flinders Lane in Melbourne, all the media, so, you know, magazines were king 9 years ago. All the media was in Sydney, and, so I shouldn't say all, most of the national media was in Sydney. And, you know, the key titles where you want to get placed, Harper's Bazaar, Marie Claire, Women's Health, all those titles, they were up in Sydney. And so, and websites were, obviously everyone was online, and it wasn't to the extent that it is now, but there was, content was king even back then. And I looked at, you know, my background is marketing and I understand PR, and I looked and said, well, what have I got to offer? I started creating video content and offering it to the websites of the magazines and saying, would you like this piece of content for your website? And everybody, you know, there weren't content creators back then the way that there are now. So I was, every single thing I filmed, I got placed, you know, basically wherever I wanted it to. And so started to get some really great free PR out of that. And then I think it was about 6 months after we opened, my brother said, you should do a DVD. And I was like, oh no, you know, who am I to do a DVD? And he's like, let's just film it and see what it looks like. And so I just sort of went, okay, well, let's just do it. And we did that. And then we had a DVD, and then we did another DVD, and then more and more content. So all the content, not the DVD content, but all the other video content that we'd filmed, we put on we had an online studio back then. So back in 2012, we had an online studio, and it was free at the time, and they were all short workouts, sort of 5 to 10 minutes. And then probably a few years later, so maybe 5 years ago, it was really popular. Everybody loved it. The DVDs were selling really well. And, you know, seeing that online is the future, DVDs are on the way out. You know, people were starting to ask for USBs, and thought, oh, you know, maybe it's time we go one better. And that's when we decided to monetize our online studio. So we shot a whole lot of new content and created, you know, Barre Body Online as it is today. And yeah, so we've had a thriving online studio for at least 4 years. So that was, you know, very, very fortunate for us. And then on the teacher training side of things, we have invested so much time and energy, heart and soul, of course, into our teacher training programs. And it was about 3 years ago that I started saying, we need to put this online, we need to put this online. And it took us a little while, but we launched our online teacher training 2 years ago. And that was just Barre to begin with. And then we were working on all throughout 2019. I'm like, we need more. This is a huge opportunity. Online is the future. Digital is the future. So we created a whole lot more content. And it just so happened that we were ready to launch our Pilates mat teacher training online just as COVID hit. And so, and we had our pre and postnatal teacher training, meditation teacher training. I'm trying to think, there's like 6 or 7 others. And so we were ready to go. We were like, oh, well, we've done all this work, we're ready to go. So we were very, very fortunate when COVID did hit that, unlike a lot of other fitness businesses who had to go, oh, hang on, we have to change our business, we have to try and keep our clients and try and develop a strategy for digital, we just turned up the volume. So it was all there. We just turned up the volume and we added live stream to the repertoire of what we do. So COVID has been enormously challenging. I'd say it's the most professionally challenging time I've had. Not the most personally challenging time, but definitely the most professionally challenging time that I've had. But the way, like the magic of the way our team came together over that time, like the camaraderie, the total commitment, the unwavering belief and commitment to the cause, or what we were doing, and that everything was going to be okay, was just mind blowing. And so we've been really fortunate. Our business is thriving. Our studio business, it's a little bit different. So we took a big hit. It was very, very scary when we had to close 9 studios overnight, and with no view to when they would reopen. At the time, everyone was talking about a minimum of 6 months. And hubby and I, our online businesses existed, but they weren't, they were certainly not going to pay the bills of 9 studios. We had 10 commercial leases, of which most of them we've personally guaranteed. That's another lesson. Add that to the business lessons. Try not to be a personal guarantee. Try not to be the guarantor on your leases if possible. But we personally guarantee most of our leases. So, and we have a team. It was hard enough, excruciatingly hard for our casual teachers to effectively stand down because the studios closed. That was just excruciating. Then we've got a team of 10, maybe 12 full-time and part-time staff, that we've got a payroll of over $100,000 a month that we had to meet, even though our income had gone from here right down to here. So with the leases and the staff, that was the absolute scariest thing. We resigned ourselves to really losing a lot. And we just, both hubby and I, said, if we can just hang on to our home, and if we can just, keep things ticking along, if we can just, if we can survive, it'll be great. But then we've been really lucky. We've had amazingly supportive landlords. We decided to permanently close 3 studios, and that really reduced our liability. So it costs a little bit to close them because you have to pay a certain amount to surrender a lease, but our liability is a little less. Melbourne's obviously quite troublesome for us at the moment. We've got 3 studios there and they're closed. We've got our studio in Sydney CBD, which is very, very expensive and very, very quiet because nobody's there. So it's definitely a mixed bag. COVID's been, pretty hairy. But like everyone, we're just trying to ride out the storm, hang in there.
For sure. And I think that, as you were talking about that, it wasn't just something that just happened overnight, right? It felt like that, where it was just all hit and everyone was like, no, close the doors. But I think there were so many things that you had in play beforehand that then helped support you in being able to pivot, not necessarily pivot, but ramp up quickly. Yeah.
Yep.
So it was even though yes, you had the online and you had the studios and you had to close the studios, there was still huge decision making that had to happen within there. What were some of the biggest decisions that you had to make that you felt has impacted your business now?
Well, closing studios and making the decision to invest in growth at a time when I don't know how long we can keep the lights on. We sort of made the decision that we would keep trying to grow the online business at the same time. So plug the holes, bucket water out of the boat, but then at the same time try and build a new boat that we can all jump onto. So
huge. That is huge, because there was so much fear and uncertainty when it all happened. And for you, there's still studios closed, so it's having a light.
And it's our livelihood.
Yeah,
my husband and I, it's all we do. We don't have another income. We haven't worked in a job for a long time. So that there was a lot of fear around that. And our children are in school up here, and we live in Mullumbimby in northern New South Wales near Byron. So the thought of, oh, well, maybe we'll have to go, if it all goes to pot, well, we might have to go back to Sydney or Melbourne and try and get jobs. So it was every day big decisions and big negotiations we had 10 commercial leases. So one of our spaces has 2 leases. One of our studios has 2 leases. So we had 10 commercial leases, 10 sort of 9 landlords to be negotiating with. So it was
Mm.
everyday decisions. And I'm still making them, to be honest. I'm still making some really big decisions about the future of our business, trying to predict. And that's trying to have a crystal ball and see into the future and see what it's going to be like around the world in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, trying to work out which bits to stay with, which bits to try and hold on, because the growth on the other side could be really, really amazing, and which bits to let go of. So yeah, I'm making those decisions. We're making those decisions all the time still now.
Yeah, huge. And like, especially because like the way I imagine like making the decisions about where to open your studios, you would pretty much imagine that opening CBD, there's going to be people, right? And like, no one would have even pictured that this would have impacted cities like it has. Like, even still here in Brisbane, the cities are still really quiet. And it's crazy how that's still not picked back up. Like, you just never know, right? But then you've made this decision to then go all in with the online. How has that then gone through the roof for you?
Well, I wouldn't say we're all in, but we're still in with studios as well. We've still got 6 studios and still really holding firm. When I talk about like we had considered like, let's just close all the studios, but we're staying. We've decided we're just going to stay the course, hang in there. Yeah, it's just this crazy big ride. But the online, I feel pretty confident that it's here to stay in some form. I don't think, I would also say that it doesn't have to be, I think it's really hard to do everything really well. So to the people who are, thinking about starting online now, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe it's not. Like, I feel like there's going to be a swing back to physical, wanting to be in, see, touch, feel, have that experience. I know that when we reopen in Melbourne, it's going to be really, really busy. And I think that, people that are online now, they'll leave online, they'll come back to studios, because you can't replicate that experience, that being held accountable, that social connection, being part of a community, the felt experience. So yeah, we're not all in. We're kind of wanting to do everything as best we can. And it all comes back to how best can we serve our clients, how best can we serve the community that love Barre Body and Bend and want what we can give them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to think about like the way that I've been supporting my clients through this crazy time is actually thinking about, like you just said, like thinking about the future and the impact that's going to have on the future of the business. Do you ever think like in the future, then looking back on what you've just been through and everything you're going through at the moment and how you're showing up and what you want to look back on and be proud of?
Well, I want to be proud of the way that we've treated our people, the way that we've cared for the team. I want to be proud of the decisions that we've made. I want to be proud of, I guess, the legacy that we're leaving. We have quite a sizable monthly charitable donation, and I remember at the beginning of COVID, they contacted me and said, because all of our studios closed, income goes from here to almost nothing, and they're like, oh, we really need you to keep supporting us, but we understand. I was like, no, we're absolutely going to keep supporting you, because to me, that's a non-negotiable. So that's, something that we can look back on and be proud of. But yeah, I hope to be able to look back on and go, gee, you were right. You made some good decisions there. But who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you have, in the way that for you to be able to still be thriving in a place where you've been able to keep your team members on board, you've been able to support keeping some of the studios open, you've been able to have this beautiful online space where your community can come together and be supported throughout a time when health has been so impacted, and even just the impacted then the mental health as well. Like, I think that being able to move your body and have that connection with your body has been so important throughout this time for so many people. And I think that being able to offer that to your customers, I imagine the feedback from them has been huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, yeah. And the sense that we're really contributing positively to people's experience of shutdown, experience of lockdown, and, you know, helping with mental health as well as physical health.
Massive, massive. Amazing. Wow. Is there anything, I would love to know, is there anything that you've changed within your business over the last, like since the beginning of COVID, that you feel like you've implemented that has been a positive impact that you feel like you'll keep, that maybe wouldn't have come about without COVID?
Yeah, well, that's probably checking in on the team and asking, you know, I've done it in different ways, but making sure that every week we're checking in, every meeting we're checking in, you know, how are you feeling? Like, what do you give today out of 10? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly? It's really, really rich and really having a meaningful effect on teamwork and support and just feeling connected.
Incredible, and so important throughout this, like so important. Oh goodness. Amazing. So what's next for Barre Body?
What's next? Just try and be smart, make smart decisions, continue to grow from a studio perspective, from an online perspective, from a teacher training perspective. Just keep, you know, nothing's really changed for us, just slight emphasis shifts, more emphasis online, but the big vision is always the same: grow to the best version of the business that we can. Keep looking after people, keep spreading the love, just keep doing what we're doing. So more of the same. There's no big surprises yet, but who knows? One thing that I can say after 9 years in this business is things change overnight. They just change like that. So yeah, there could be some big surprises that I don't even know about yet.
Amazing. And last question, what's some advice that you have that you would pass on to another business owner that would like to be able to take their business to the next level?
Take calculated risks. So if you want to take things to the next level, you have to be willing to take risks. I don't think that big rewards come without big risks. And I would also advise get some coaching. We've had a business coach this year for the first time ever, and he's been great. He's been super, super helpful, helping us look at our business in a different way and grow in areas that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So yeah, I think, you know, get a little bit of help from someone who's done what you want to do. And yeah, just understand that you've got to take risks. If you want the rewards, you've got to take the risks.
Absolutely agree. Well, I want to acknowledge you for all the risks that you've taken over the years, like right from the beginning. And the sound of, like, as you were talking about how you were like, from one thing to the next, you were listening to your customers, you were giving them what they needed, then you were taking those risks and hoping that, just praying that it was going to work out, and just those calculated risks have absolutely served you well. So I just want to acknowledge you for all of those risks, and thank you so much for sharing all your beautiful insights and understandings of leadership and all the things that you've been through over the last 9 years of business. So thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.